Welcome back to Words of Life. I'm Bernie Dake, and I have the extreme privilege to introduce you or reintroduce you to Natalie Runion. Welcome, Natalie.
Hello, Bernie. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be with you guys today.
Oh, man, the pleasure is ours. Now, some of you may have heard from Natalie if you've been listening faithfully, because our friend Emmanuel did an interview with her not too long ago. But I get to do the full episodes and talk about you as a person, as a Christian, and the ministry that you've started. And I'm excited to introduce Natalie Runion and Raised to Stay to the Words of Life audience. Natalie, tell us about yourself. Where are you from? What do you do?
I am a pastor's kid from Cincinnati, Ohio, and we live currently in Colorado Springs, but we're actually making another move here soon. So lots of movement for our family. But I am married to Tony. We've been married for 16 years. We have two daughters who are 10 and 14. And so we're right in the thick of parenting. So please don't ask me to do any parenting advice because I'm not good at it yet right now.
Right.
So we're just winging it. But we moved to Colorado 6 years ago to be on staff with New Life Church. And it's been an incredible 6 years. But from that, I've just kind of at 43 discovered my purpose in the global and local church, which is to tell people we can't quit. So my family and I, we are all church kids. My parents live with us. My dad was a pastor for most of my life. And we're just, I think now, I was a pastor's kid for 25 years and then went into full-time ministry immediately out of college. And I've been a worship leader and I've been a songwriter and I've done a little bit of everything in the church. And I think we're just now coming to a place as a family where we understand like why God has allowed some things to happen in our lives. And so it's been a wild past couple of years of just saying yes to Jesus and holding on through disappointment and all the things that we feel as Christ followers.
Yeah. Okay, so let's peel back the onion just a smidge. You said for our listeners who are in 65 different countries right now, Cincinnati is part of the great state of Ohio, which does get some cold weather. So you're a four-season person.
Yes.
You're used to that. Then you move to Colorado, which definitely gets four seasons.
Yes. And it was interesting because I thought Colorado was nothing but snow.
Yeah.
You actually live on the sun with no oxygen
Wow.
is really what Colorado Springs is. I mean, you'll get the snow, but it's gone like the next day because of how bright and sunny it is. So that is one thing I have loved about being out in Colorado is waking up and just seeing the mountains like right in my backyard, taking our kids to experience nature in new ways. I wasn't a runner, certainly did not become a runner in Colorado with the lack of oxygen that is up there. I get winded walking into Walmart. It's really not flattering. But it's a beautiful place. If you've never been to Colorado Springs, it's stunning.
Yeah, absolutely. You can be in snow in a matter of minutes on a drive or be in the middle of summer at the base. That's amazing. But growing up in Cincinnati, that's also a famous place for chili.
It is.
And how do you appreciate your chili?
I do three ways from Skyline. I do not like Gold Star. Gold Star is not my thing. Skyline, 100%. I'm a foodie. I think Cincinnati made me a foodie. Grater's ice cream.
And it's really become a hub now.
It has.
There's so much to do there.
I can say this because podcast will be aired, but we're actually moving back there.
Wow.
So I was mildly obese in Colorado Springs. I'm going to be with my people back in Colorado or back in Ohio.
Yeah, I love it.
I'll be like, look like all the rest of them.
I love it. I love it. I'm sure they will be glad to have you back.
Yeah.
And this is, some free advertising for them. Skyline
That's
Chili.
right. Skyline Chili. Go get it.
So now growing up in Cincinnati, you said you were a preacher's kid.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a preacher's kid. I was raised in the Salvation Army, so we're born out of the Methodist tradition. How did you come up? Where are you from?
My dad was actually not a believer early in his 20s, and he got saved in Over the Rhine, Cincinnati.
Wow.
His mom, my grandma, was this praying Baptist woman, prayed my dad through. He was a
Nice.
drug addict and alcoholic. And he actually got saved and went into Evangelism Explosion, which at the time was when people were handing out those tracts that had like a butterfly on them that said you're going to hell at the bottom. Like it was as if that was going to buffer the butterfly and going to hell. And so my dad actually took my family. We'd go down and give out blankets and did homeless shelters.
Wow.
And we ministered to the people he used to do drugs with. And so when it came time for him to really pursue ministry, we went through the Church of God, Cleveland, Tennessee, and he did their internship program. And that's where we spent most of my childhood, was in the Church of God. But my dad was the kind of man that if he saw a church that was struggling, no matter what the denomination, he would step in. And
Mm,
so we called his churches the Island of Misfit Toys because he would go to the churches nobody wanted.
yeah,
So we were United Church of Christ, we were Church of God Anderson, we kind of did all of it.
yeah.
Because my dad, wherever he went, had a soup kitchen in his buildings. He would have openings for anybody to come in and sleep if they needed to. And a lot of churches didn't like that. So I was raised picking up hitchhikers and meeting people where they were. We spent every Sunday after church in nursing homes giving communion.
Wow.
I went into prisons as a kid and would play the piano for guys that were homeless before they could eat. They had to go to church. And so I'd be up there at 8 years old with 300 homeless guys screaming victory and Jesus at me
Amen.
from their pews. And my dad just taught us to love the people before we loved our positions.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's still who he is.
Amen. That's beautiful. I think, the sad part is your dad just missed out on the Salvation Army because it sounds like we're kindred
Hey,
spirits.
he's only 68. He
He's
can
got
come
time.
in. He's
I
got
love it.
time.
I love it. So, born out of the darkest England, back in 1860s, the Salvation Army starts with this Methodist minister who just felt like if you could feed a person's body, you could feed a soul, so they did soup, soap, and salvation. It just sounds like we are right on the same
Yes,
page, which is pretty cool. But then we learn as we peel back the onion that you're a piano player.
I
Is
am.
that how you write your songs?
It is. I tried to take piano lessons and they realized about 4 years in that I was playing by ear, not by notes.
Mm,
I think that's just the Pentecostal in me.
yeah,
I grew up with some of the best musicians,
I can't imagine.
and multi-ethnic. I mean, just so diverse and the music and very gospel.
Sweet,
So I would sit on the front pew. That was my spot. And I would sit behind the piano player and watch their hands.
man.
My favorite story, though, my dad pastored this United Church of Christ in small town, Ohio, in Cincinnati. And it was this old church building with like the graveyard and everything. The bell, it had a bell. It
Yeah,
was built in like 1872. And there was an organ player named Lucille, and she was in her 80s. And I would watch her play the organ. And one day her foot was hurt and she couldn't push the pedals. So she had me crawl underneath and she
get
was yelling
out.
chords and I was playing the bass pedals for her. And that's how I learned to do chords is I would crawl under the pedals and play bass on the organ for Lucille.
That is so cool. Man. Well, you've got a drummer over there doing the engineering for us. Our producer's a guitar
A
player.
band.
I'll pick up the bass.
Come
Whatever we
on.
can do. We should release a Natalie Runion Words of Life album.
I'm in.
Sweet. Uh, okay. Then you mentioned 2 kids, 2 daughters,
Yeah.
10 and 14. God bless you.
Yeah.
You are putting in the time, I'm sure.
Yes.
And your husband, Tony. Now that sounds Italian. Is he a good cook? You got to have a name like Tony. You got to be a good cook.
He's a better cook than I am. He
Gotcha.
does the cooking in the family.
I love it. And now full-time ministry. So you come out of the church. Did you go to school in somewhere in Ohio,
I went to
perhaps?
Miami of Ohio.
Miami of Ohio. They have a decent football program.
Listen, it was the best thing that I could have done as a pastor's kid.
Nice.
Campus Crusade for Christ was there.
Yeah.
And so I became a worship leader there. That's where I found my passion for leading worship.
Cool.
It was during the passion movement, in the late 90s, early 2000s, where worship was still pure hearted in the sense that there weren't cameras and
Yeah.
social media to record it. And that was my gateway, I think, into ministry, trying to run from ministry was worship.
So Keith Green, a piano player.
They were all like massive influences.
Yeah.
It was that, if a worship leader leads worship and nobody's there to record it, did the worship actually happen?
Yeah.
We didn't have to worry about that then. You
Right.
would sit around bonfires and pianos and in churches and just, this authentic sound would come
Yeah.
out. I miss that sometimes.
Okay, so now we've got more of the onion in the soup, so to speak. But you have a full-time ministry now
Mhm.
with Raised to Stay. Kind of tell us about how that came about.
I think at around 40 years old, I hit this wall and, maybe it's a ministry midlife crisis. I don't know what it is, but when you've been in ministry your whole life, well, at least the life you remember, it becomes this identity.
Yeah.
I'm a pastor's kid. Okay, well, I graduate, I'm out of the home. My dad's still a pastor, but now I need to have a job. And we chased these identities in ministry. And for 40 years, that had been my identity. And I come up against a season of pain again, another season of loss and potentially we could say church abuse,
Yeah.
spiritual abuse. And I remember just walking the dog one day and being like, if this is the church and this is what is going to be my next 40 years, no thank you.
Mm.
And I was having a really honest conversation with the Lord. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. Let me just be a Starbucks barista. Like, if I could just go work at Starbucks, I have a degree in kinesiology. I could go be a
Wow.
personal trainer. I could go teach phys ed again. I was a gym teacher for 10 years. Like, I had so many things. I'm like Dora the Explorer. Like, you could put like a snorkel on me and I'll be like, I'm a scuba diver. I don't know. I could do a bunch of different things. Why am I still doing this?
Yeah.
And that walk, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, in the later episodes, that walk is where the Lord really dropped that phrase, raised to stay, into my spirit.
Mm.
To the point where I start weeping because I know that it's not my words.
Yeah.
And I ran home and I Googled and there was nothing called Raised to Stay. And I thought, well, I guess this is my purpose.
Wow.
And I wrote my first Instagram account post that day. And the entire point of that was just to keep me from quitting.
So we do have some show notes that people can kind of follow and then try to find you. But while we're here with the mics open, talk to us about some links. How do we find you? Where do people catch you on Instagram and all the socials?
On Instagram, we have a thriving community that I call my stayers.
Yeah.
You can go to Instagram and just @Raised to Stay. You can find us there. On Facebook, it's under Natalie Runion, which is spelled Runion. And we also have a private Raised to Stay group where people can just converse with each other and dialogue. So those online communities are basically run by the stayers. They come in and they encourage each other. They fight like brothers and sisters. They reconcile like brothers and sisters. It's a beautiful space.
Yeah. When I started listening to the podcast, I appreciate your vulnerability. And one of the things you say that's important for people to hear, because you're certainly not alone. But there was a time when you were daily trying to quit. You were
Yeah.
daily trying to leave this ministry or platform life to get, as you say, maybe go do barista work for Starbucks. No offense to anybody that's a barista.
Right.
That, of course, has its own challenges. But I appreciate that. Certainly coming out of COVID, we're all much more sensitive to the idea of mental health awareness, and the fact that we all need to be seen and heard. So I just hope that anybody that's listening or watching this feels a sense of community or an appreciation that you are not alone. And I cannot wait to hear what you have to share with us in the episodes to come, because there is so much more to what you're doing. So bless you, Natalie. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.